Let's take a minute and examine the new capabilities that you have as a power user. The first one seems simple. Being able to control the navigation and create pages. Well, this again is a great responsibility, because now, instead of saying, wow, I wish I could get here, or I wish I could get there, you actually have the control to be able to create and increase the usability of the site that you're on. Now, I say this as if every single time you can change the navigation, but you have to be careful because there's usually some information architecture and governance that your organization has put in place around these issues. Learn from that governance committee we discussed, and you'll find out what the boundaries are of being able to edit the navigation to make your site work better for you. Speaking of making the site work better for you, you're also able to change the look. Again, it depends specifically on the organization, but there's a new way to change the look and feel. It's not the themes that used to be in SharePoint 2013, but they're easily manipulated and they have some presets that are pretty nice. Finally, one of the biggest things is being able to create content. No more are you just a user. You can now select the button, add an app. Now, this phrase is new and modern, but really you're creating the lists and libraries of old. But there are also some apps that are available on a store. Yes, there is a SharePoint WebPart app store. And sometimes an app is actually a combination of multiple lists and libraries. So this is the new term. We'll take a look at the store in just a few minutes. First, let's take a deeper look about navigation. Now you have the capability of editing the global navigation. This is called global because it can be used as a consistent element on multiple sites to allow for easy navigation. Most likely, this will be centrally managed across multiple sites. In most cases, you're definitely able to edit the quick launch, sometimes called the left navigation, and also the local navigation compared to the global navigation. This automatically populates when you add an app, a list or a library, unless you choose otherwise, and it also shows recent additions of items that you've been changing on the site. Finally, you have site activities. Here, you're able to share and set permissions. You're able to follow the site, which adds a bookmark into your personal site to be able to always reference back within SharePoint the sites that you want to be able to easily find. You're able to sync a document library within this site, which is going to save a copy onto your desktop. And then, of course, you're now able to actually edit the page, change the content that is on the page, and change what pieces of that content show up. Also, there's a great button that allows you to hide the navigation if you're working with a big list and you need all the space on the page. Above all of these items is Site Actions in a commonly used cog. In here, the Site Actions, you're again able to access the permissions under Shared With. You're able to add a new page, which expands the SharePoint house that you're living in. You're able to add an app. You're able to go into Site Contents and see all of the rooms that are inside your house. You're able to directly access changing the look and feel that we discussed. And then you're able to now access something called Site Settings. And this is where all the background settings are set for your site. You'll now have access to some of them. Let's take a moment and examine these things in more detail. Now let's take a look at all the different ways that a power user can control the navigation. First, we'll take a look at the global navigation, then the quick launch, and finally all of the controls that are hidden within either list and library settings or within the site settings. First, let's take a look at the global navigation of this subsite called Power. You'll notice that compared to the quick launch on the left, the global navigation does not have a button that says Edit Links. This is because the global navigation is, again, a shared navigation across many sites. The most common scenario is that the top site, in this case called Home, holds the global navigation, and every site underneath it shares that. Let's take a look by going up to the home site. Now that we're at the home site, you'll see the Edit Links button is showing. Here we can now edit and manipulate the global navigation for all sites that are inheriting it. You'll notice immediately that this is a brand new feature of SharePoint 2013, being able to edit the links directly on the page without having to go into the site settings menu that we're used to going to. In the global navigation, we'll just take a look at how to reconfigure the links by dragging and dropping, and how to add a link directly. Yes, in SharePoint 2013, you can manipulate the links just by clicking on them and moving them around. Let's see what would happen if I tried to change the order. Look, I've just put Home behind Power. Well, that doesn't quite make that much sense. Let's do something else. Let's take Power and put it as a sub of Home. Well, that might make sense in some scenarios. Let's press save and see what it looks like. Here now you can see much less space is taken up, and the drop-down arrow is showing next to Home, saying that there are subs in the navigation to that Home link. Look, Power. Okay. That could make sense when you have a lot of different global navigation pieces, but not necessarily in this small case. So let's edit links again. And move Power back to where it was in the first place. Now, let's examine the link button. Once I press on it, I can directly type in a new link that I'd like to show up in the global navigation from anywhere. Now I've just added the Learn Now link directly to the global navigation, so from any site I'll always be able to get back to my trainings. Let's keep this and press save. Now let's go back to the Power site and see if these changes we made up on the Home site have carried through. Great. I can now see that I have the Home and Power links that I originally had, in addition the Learn Now link that I added directly. Let's take a look at how to manipulate the quick launch from the home page. Just like we did when we went back to the top site, we can click on Edit Links. Here you can see the same X's that allow us to delete the links immediately. You also could have a similar sub relationship where Home becomes a heading and Site contents becomes a subheading. To find exactly what drag and drop stands for, let's go into the site contents and cancel out of what we've just been playing around with. Clicking Edit Links again, we'll take a look at the sign where it says to drag and drop your link here. Here you can see the apps that we have available at this site. Maybe I'd like to show the documents on the Quick Launch. So what I can do is go over to Documents and drag them in. It's that easy. Well, I also want to make it above Site Contents. Now let's press Save. Great! Now we've just dragged and dropped an item directly into the navigation. This is the same feature that is available on the global. Now there are, of course, two more places that we can manipulate navigation. Because we were just using documents, let's take a quick look back in the list settings within the Documents document library. We'll go back to the library and list settings. And of course we'll click under a heading that says List Name, Description, and Navigation. Here you're able to change the name that shows up within the navigation and the name of the list or library itself, and click on the selection of yes or no under the question if we would like to display the content on the Quick Launch. Why don't we select no so it's hidden again? I know I'm about to re-put this library into the navigation using a different way within site settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the URL, and I'm going to go into the site settings and look for navigation. Here, the navigation is in a similar section to within the list and library settings under Look and Feel. In this case, we don't click on the link that says Title, Description, and Logo, but we do want Quick Launch, Top Link Bar, which is another name for the global navigation, or there's a new feature that we haven't discussed, which is called Tree View. Let's take a look at the Quick Launch first. Here you can see the exact replica of the different information we've been viewing on the Quick Launch. Now we have a few different choices. We can add a new navigation link, we can add a new heading, and we can change order. What I'd like to do first is let's add a new heading. We added a web address and typed a description of how the URL will show up on the Quick Launch. And there you go. Let's add that document links back. We clicked on New Navigation Link, and you'll see, just like the heading, we type in a web address, type in a description, and now we choose what heading we'd like it to fall under. I'd like it to fall under Training. Now you can see that we have a structure that was similar to when we were dragging and dropping site contents under the home link. Let's take a quick look at changing the order. You'll see here that you can quickly change the order if you had a lot of links. Very handy. Now we'll go back and take a look at Tree View that is also a part of the Quick Launch. Tree View is a very familiar view that you've seen in file shares where you save documents in folders, in your Explorer on your desktop, and in many other applications. You can see by default that it's not enabled. One of the reasons is that it usually takes up a lot of space. Let's take a look. Now you can see that we instantaneously are able to view the subsites of this site, the contents directly in this site, and if I went to one of these libraries or sites, I'm able to expand it. You can see that if there were a lot of sites and subsites involved, this view could get very busy very quickly. In a small structured environment, this might be a helpful view, but usually it's turned off. Let's go back and turn it off again. Finally, let's take a look at the top link bar settings. What you'll notice is, well, there's not really much to do, because if you remember, the top link bar or global navigation is inherited from the top. So my only choice right now is to stop inheriting links. Let's press this and see what happens. Now I get the same exact controls that I got before when we were editing the Quick Launch. For this site, I don't really want to use that, so let's go back and use links from parent. You've now seen several different ways that a power user can edit and control navigation throughout a group of sites and an individual one. In this demonstration, we'll take a look at the capabilities that are available to the power user within the Site Settings menu. We'll take a look at the headings and give a general overview of each section. I'll stop and show you some key areas that are very powerful tools for power users. Finally, we'll take a look at how to change the look and feel of your site. That is, if it fits within your governance plan to be able to do so. But it's a really new and nice feature in SharePoint 2013, so we're going to go ahead and show it. Let's go to the Site Settings menu. Here you'll see that Microsoft has done its best, like in other settings and menus throughout the Office family, to use common language. It's not uncommon for us SharePoint administrators to forget exactly where something is, but we know the trick. Read the heading, and you'll be guided very quickly to get to where you want to go. Let's take a look at each heading. First, we have users and permissions. As you can imagine, this is about finding the groups, the permissions that are applied to them, adding individuals into groups if you're not already using the share button, and then seeing some more technical permissions for applications. Next, we have Web Designer galleries. Now, this isn't quite as clear as most of the other ones, and here it's basically the central place for controlling columns, content types, and supporting content that makes your site run, look, and feel the same way across a large organization. The next heading is Site Administration, and as the title alludes to, this is a much more technical section that you'll probably not use that much. However, I want to take a moment and look at popularity trends. Popularity trends are what used to be called usage reports. I've already pulled one up, and let's take a look. Here you can see valuable information that wasn't easily available to you in SharePoint 2010 about usage of the site day over day and month over month. This is obviously not a really great graph in a development environment, but you can see that just as a click of a button, I can provide this information to the business owner, to the technical team if they're not already looking at it, and more importantly to my peers to demonstrate the usage of the business solution that I've created within my SharePoint environment. Don't forget popularity trends. It's also available on individual lists and libraries. The final column in this row is search, and that's pretty advanced, but you can do a lot of great things in SharePoint 2013 with the search to increase the hits and the value of the response that a user gets when they type something into that search box. Last but not least, let's talk about look and feel. Here you can find access to controlling the navigation, controlling the title and description, and even the logo of the site. And what we're now going to take a deeper look into is how to change the look and feel. Just for an aside, the changing the look and feel is also available from the settings dropdown. Here you'll see a great immediate difference between SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint 2010. Here the themes, we're still kind of using that phrase, are visual, and you can rapidly see how the different colors coordinate with each other. There might be some that you might not commonly choose, but it's fun to play around with. So let's pick this green one and see what happens. Here you can see the specific settings that you're able to rapidly control within the theme. Let's take a quick look. First, you have a picture. Next, you have the different colors, the site layout, which comes with 2, and preset selection of fonts. Let's play with this a little bit. So, it's a pretty picture, but why don't I try to add my own? I can either browse to an image, or, like most other things in SharePoint 2013, I can drag or drop. There. Now we have an instantaneous new picture in the background. This is pretty good, but, green's not really a color for ocean and sailboats. Let's take a look at the different colors that are available. We can do blue. Alright, but I'd like to see the image a little bit more. There's another blue. Let's look for any more blues. Ooh, that's pretty cool. Why don't I keep this? Now I mentioned that there are different site layouts that SharePoint provides for you. The first is Seattle, which is basically the most common intranet view. The second is Oslo, which is most commonly used, especially for Office 365 public sites. That's pretty neat. We'll keep it there. Also, you'll see that the fonts come in sets of 2. Let's see what typewriter looks like. That's okay. You can see the site title changed, you can see the page title changed. It's very readable. Let's try another. My favorite modern. That's perfect. Now, to see it in full sight, let's try it out. Here we can see exactly how the site would look almost in the full browser window. This is neat, but probably not something that I would really pick. So I'm just going to say, no, not quite there. And it brings you back to the beginning. We can go all the way back and start over and pick a major theme, or we can decide, you know what, this look and feel is good enough for me. One of the biggest capabilities that a power user now has is the ability to add content. A large part of being able to add content is being able to add lists and libraries or apps for that content to go in. You can add a list or library by going to the site contents or by going to the settings dropdown and selecting Add an App. You can see here the highlight of Your Apps. And if you remember, an app is, as I mentioned, a list or a library, but now in SharePoint 2013, it also could be a group of features combined together. On top of that, you'll see a SharePoint store on the left. This SharePoint store could be accessing a public SharePoint store that has third-party applications and feature sets that you can add instantaneously to your SharePoint farm, as long as your administrators have approved it. Or also an internal SharePoint store that has a lot of apps that your developers have internally built and have allowed for download and application throughout your SharePoint farm. It's a model that you're familiar with probably on your phone, and it's here to stay in the SharePoint and actually Office environment. Let's take a look at the other notable features that are in the Site Contents and Add an App section. Now you have two brand new sections. One, Noteworthy, that's showing the most commonly applied apps in your environment. Then there's a list of all of the different apps, and here you can even filter it. You can filter it by newest or by name. That allows you to more easily find the apps. But actually my favorite part of this app section is the ability to search. If I know that I want to add a document library, what I can do is start typing and select Doc. Here I can see two different types of apps, the document library and the report library. If I wanted to see a few more different options, what I could do is remove that and type in library. Now you can see a wider assortment of different libraries that are available to me. For this instance, I'm just going to select a document library. Here I want to call the document library Supporting Docs. Notice that I did two things here. I don't have a space between supporting and docs, and also I didn't really want to spell out documents because I am creating the URL for all of the documents that are going to reside within this document library. In addition, you can control the document library on creation with the advanced options. Let's take a look. Okay, so SharePoint got rid of the title that I just created when you clicked on Advanced Settings, but if I knew I wanted to do this, I would have clicked on it first and wouldn't have typed my title in. Let's type it again. A good best practice is to write a description to let you know what this app is for. Maybe sometimes I'll even enter in if there are any special permissions. And definitely if you're in a development environment, you want to write in the description if this item is live. so that no one comes in and wonders if it's being used and deletes it by accident. Now that I've typed in a description, do I want to create a version? Not really. Do I want to select a document template? You'll see here that it starts as a Microsoft Word document, but if you knew that you were going to be creating only a specific other type of document within this document library, you could select Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, a designer web page, a basic page, or a web part page. Here, this is just a document library, and most likely I'll just be dragging and dropping items in and not creating them. So let's just say Word document. Now I'm ready to create my app. Now we've been brought directly into my new app, and you can see on the left-hand side that it says Recent and Supporting Docs. If you remember, I said you also could do this from within Site Contents, so let's take a quick look at that. Hey look, it's my brand new Supporting Docs, and it even says new. Also, you can see the big button on the top that says Add an App, which will bring me to the exact same place that we started at. It's as easy as that to start creating content and containers for all of your information within your SharePoint site. As a power user with raised permissions, you're able to add an app and create new content. When you're working with this content, you'll now see new icons in full color across the ribbon. Unlike other Office tools that you're used to working with, where you see all of the features all of the time, SharePoint is based on permissions, so items that you do not have access to or capabilities that you're not able to use are grayed out. Now, again, as a power user, they'll be in full color. There are three main categories of items that will show up in the ribbon. First, you'll have access to be able to manage who the list or library is shared with. Second, you'll be able to create and modify views. These are different pre-built ways for other users to be able to look at the information. I really like to think about these as mini reports. Imagine you have a start date and end date. You would be able to group items by the month that they're due and show them rapidly to the users. Finally, a brand new capability that you have access to as a power user is all of the list settings and direct access to third-party tools that allow you to edit lists in InfoPath or SharePoint Designer. Let's take a look at this live. For this demonstration, we'll take a look at an existing document library and create a brand new task list to see the different capabilities that are now on the ribbon available to you as a power user. Let's take a look at the Supporting Documents library. To view the ribbon, we'll go up into the Files tab located on the top of your screen. Here we need to select the document for the appropriate capabilities to show. You'll see that almost every capability is highlighted, and in truth, a person with full control or an average member with contribute permissions has about the same exact capabilities when you're talking about the document level. To show this, let's switch to a different browser logged into Jen, who again is in the members group with contribute permissions. You'll notice that I have the same exact document And actually in the ribbon, I have the same exact features available to me. Where the major difference is located within the Library tab. Let's go there and see what Jen can see. Here, there are a lot of powerful tools available to Jen. In Manage Views, she could create a view specifically for her, but no one else would be able to see it. She can tag and note the document. She can even take a look at what the most popular items are. But where some major differences are within customizing the library itself, and of course within settings. Let's go back to Adam and take a quick review of all of the settings that are now available to him as a power user. Now I'll select the Library tab for Adam. Here you can see that almost every single item is in full color, which means Adam has access to it. Let's take a look at the capabilities from the left. Adam too can create a view, but the difference in Adam's capability is that he can create a public view that is for everyone. Another major item that Adam can do is to create a column. Let's show this quickly. Here Adam can name a column, can pick what type of column, and select the additional column settings. In this purpose, we're going to add a column named Meeting. We're going to set it up as date and time. And then we're going to make sure it's date only. We're going to set the default to today's date, and we're going to say OK. Now you can see that the meeting column has been added to the view all items or all documents in this document library. As a power user, if I believe this meeting column is more important than the other columns that are showing currently, I now have access to modify this view. When I'm able to modify the view, I'm able to update the name of the view, pick the columns, change the order, and change several other settings that we'll go into detail at a later time. Here, I just want to move the meeting column up in front of Modified and Modified By. Just a note, remember when you're in the views, while the numbers do change on the right, the actual order of the item doesn't change on the left. So you have to be very careful and double check your numbering. Let's take a look. Type 1, name 2, meeting 3, modified 4, modified by 5. Perfect. Now I have the view that I was trying to get. The meeting column is in front of the modified and modified by. Great. Let's take a look at more capabilities. Let's quickly review the items that show up under Customize Library. First of all, a seldom used but highly powerful piece is the ability to manage the display form and the default edit form. These are automatic pages that generate when you're selecting a value or an item or a document. It's really great to be able to use these and combine different pieces of information together without having to worry about managing a lot of pages. Another major capability that a power user is able to do is to edit the library in SharePoint Designer. This is not something that happens very often, but when you want to start making solutions, it comes in very handy. Within the Settings group, we now have access to see the permissions, change workflows, and most importantly, change the library settings themselves. This is very similar to the cog, that is for the site settings. Taking a look at a few of the most powerful settings that are in library settings, we'll start with changing the name of the library. As is best practice, when I created the document library, I didn't use spaces so that the URL would not have any spaces with it. That doesn't really look that good. So here, if I go to list name, description, and navigation, I can actually change that name. This is very powerful because I can start with a short but descriptive name and change it to any name that I would like to be able to use. Also, you're able to decide if this document library shows up on the Quick Launch or not. Right now it's not, but it's showing up under the automatic display that SharePoint 2013 provides of most recent items. We'll keep these settings and say save. Another major item that you'll want to have access to as a power user is versioning settings. Here is where a lot of the magic happens that makes SharePoint such a powerful tool for document management compared to file shares. Standard, there is no versioning, but you can create major versions at any time. Or if you're very intensive on a collaborative process and you'd like to use major or minor versions, you can have access to that too. Let's change the settings that we want to do major versions, and that will keep about 10 of those. In SharePoint 2013, there's also access to several different draft item security levels. This is very helpful because in the past, only users who could edit items would be able to see the drafts. And while you're working hard on a document, it might have 5 to 6 minor draft versions. Your boss wouldn't be able to read them. Here you have control. We'll let anyone who can read items be able to see all the different versions. Also, if you're working with documents that you'd like to secure, just like a library, you can require checkout. But if you remember, this is the supporting document library that won't necessarily be worked on too rapidly, so we don't have to include this. We'll press OK and go back to the list. Finally, once you've taken the time and effort to create views, to add columns, and you really like the document library or list that you've created, you can save the document library as a template. This becomes a solution for other people who have similar documents across your organization. Another item about the library settings is that it repeats information that was also available on the ribbon. If we scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see that you're also able to manage views. Now that we've taken a look at what is provided in a document library, let's create an app that is a task list and see the different items within that ribbon. We'll name our app tasks, very original, and press create. Now we can see our new task app. Let's go in and check out the ribbon. One of the great things with SharePoint 2013 is a new timeline that is available with the task list. Let's take a look at the ribbon for a task list, and any list for that matter, that's divided into the same two sections as the document library. In this case, it's called tasks, In other lists, it would be called items. And then, of course, there's the List tab. Let's take a look at the Tasks tab first. Here, you can see some great new features that are grayed out because I don't have any individual tasks highlighted in this task list to be able to manage the timeline and the look and feel of this task list. This is, again, not very different depending on if you're a power user or if you're someone with member permissions. Let's take a look at the List tab. In the List tab, you'll notice all of the same sections that were in a document library. However, for a task list, the Connect and Export section has much more advanced Office tools to be able to be utilized. Specifically, you can open a task list in Project, export it to Excel or Access. Also, you'll see an additional item in the Customize list, which is a picture of InfoPath. A list form can be edited with InfoPath to create a more interactive look and feel. You'll notice in Settings that we also have List Settings instead of Library Settings. Let's take a look. Here we have almost the identical capabilities that we had in the document library. I want to draw your attention again to version settings. Another advantage of a SharePoint list over an Excel spreadsheet is that each line item can actually be held as a version, so you can compare it as it changes over time. In a task list, imagine that you have a task that the deadline date has changed several times. Now you'll be able to see who changed it, when they changed it, and what value they changed it to. Let's also set the version history here. And press OK. I know that this task list will also support meetings, so I want to add that meeting column to this task list also. Here, I'll do it within the list settings. Create a column. Column name meeting. Date and time. Date only, today's date, OK. Now, because there are so many more columns available in a task list, I want to create a different view that has shorter amount of information. I'll base this view after the All Tasks, which is a shortcut because it will already have the specific columns that we're showing in All Tasks. I know it's a standard view, and I'll be able to more quickly create a view for all of the users to be able to utilize. Let's call this Summary and add the start date and the description into the view. Here I know that I want the start date to show up before the due date. And I want the description to show up last, which it will. Let's press OK. Now we see that we are currently in the Summary view, which has the columns that I just created. This is a public view for everyone to see. We've now gone through and shown how a document library and a list have the same ribbons, and as a power user you have the same capabilities within each of these different apps to be able to control and manipulate content for the entire site users to see.